Cyberpunk Edgerunners, it's just such a good fucking show. I enjoyed the shit out of it. I liked it so much that I binged the entire thing in one sitting. And that's only happened like 2 times in the past with me. With Devilman Crybaby and Arcane. Arcane being the most impressive binge because the episodes are longer there. It's double the length of the episodes of Devilman Crybaby and Edgerunners. But yeah, the show is that good. And similar to Devilman Crybaby, when I finished Edgerunners, I just felt empty. Sometimes the stuff that you're consuming is just depressing, and I didn't even cry when I finished Edgerunners. I was just, wow, what is life? And the same thing had happened when I'd watched Devilman Crybaby. But I've learned since I've watched Devilman Crybaby, the way you escape from that state of limbo is via music. And fortunately for me, at about the same time when I finished watching Edgerunners, the official Cyberpunk channel released like an AMV. And that was just such a healing experience to watch that AMV. I was just like... And the thing is, I've never really liked trigger shows. Like, I did not like Promare, aside from the visuals. Kill la Kill, I dropped after 7 episodes. I don't even like Gurren Lagann. Now, you might be thinking, why the fuck is this guy saying that he dislikes Gurren Lagann? It's like internet suicide. You're painting a target on your back. Yeah, that's a pretty dumb thing to say, that you dislike Gurren Lagann. Maybe I am a fucking idiot. So before I get cancelled, let me just say this. I also dislike Monster. But yeah, with trigger shows, I've never really liked the story or the writing of those shows. Take Promare, for example. Promare, I don't know. I'm just gonna call it Promare. But yeah, for the plot, let's just plagiarize Fire Force. And for the characters, let's just rip off the classic characters from Gurren Lagann and then just throw in giant robots, giant drills, go to space, explosion, boom, movie. Like, Trigger has some of the most stacked, talented staff in the industry, but when they have full creative freedom, that results in them sometimes losing their way. But with Cyberpunk, they couldn't do that because Cyberpunk has a pre-existing world with rules on how it functions, and they have to follow those rules to make sure that their story is also canon. They can't pull off shit like, oh, this guy who was the Spiral King is not actually the main bad guy. The main bad guy is actually the anti-spirals, and you'll have to go to space to fight them, and the bad guy who you thought was the main bad guy is not actually dead when you killed him. He's also going to come to space and sacrifice himself to fight the real bad guys. And also the main character's love interest, who you thought was the Spiral King's daughter, is not actually a spiral or a human. They're actually an anti-spiral also, and they're also going to space. Trigger shows can pretty much be summed up by that Caleb City video when the writers only care about progressing the plot. With Cyberpunk, since you have to follow a set of rules that this world contains, the story is a lot more grounded. And with grounded story and writing also comes grounded visuals. And yeah, again, this is grounded by Trigger standards. Like, all of Gurren Lagann's fights and Kill la Kill's fights, they look the same to me. The character does a pose, and then there's an explosion with a light flare, like the Kanada light flare, and then they zoom past the villain, and then they do a pose again when the villain just explodes in the background. And even when the fight sequences are well storyboarded and well presented, like the action sequences in the Gurren Lagann movies and the entirety of Promare, it just looks fantastic. But the action sequences are still not well written. With Cyberpunk, again, because the writing has to be grounded, it is so much better. And it's not like it's completely grounded and it's completely realistic. No, it's still Studio Trigger stuff. It's just they found the perfect balance, taking all of the over-the-top fun elements of Studio Trigger shows while also having an engaging, grounded experience. And again, this would feel way too over-the-top for some people. Why do these two look like they're sucking each other's guts out? What the actual fuck is going on in this scene? Why do they present one of the most depressing deaths in the story in the most comical way possible? Rebecca's death is like a visual callback to her brother's death, which also like came out of absolutely nowhere, and the same scene was repeatedly shown from different angles. But do we really need that visual callback though? It's always over the top fun, and some sequences might end up feeling slapstick because of it, but that's just Studio Trigger, and I've always enjoyed that when they don't go over the limit. And here, as I said before, it is the perfect balance. And the entire thing with Cyber Psychosis, it's so well done. And the world is also so beautifully built. I know this was built by the gaming team, but they did such a good job at replicating that and expanding upon that. it's just a masterclass of beautiful world building. Like this time, when they run out of ideas for world building, they can't just go to space. Ironically, they were able to do such a good job because they were limited in what they can do with the world. They were restricted when it came to substance, but they were absolutely free when it came to style. Like they don't have an entire 3D modeled city to use as backgrounds, but they do have fantastic background artists led by art directors to paint beautiful landscapes. They don't have dynamic lighting technologies like the video game has, but they do have an incredible compositing staff who definitely spent an enormous amount of time making sure that every single element looks harmonious. And of course, the most important element when you're trying to engross the viewer into a world is the art direction. It's the reason why Made in Abyss works so perfectly. You feel like the island is real. You feel like the abyss is real because the creative vision of the people who made the show, their love for the show is contagious and it oozes into you. And especially with like a cyberpunk setting, like it's the reason why Ghost in the Shell worked so well in the past because of its incredible art direction that literally painted the world for you. And recently we also had Akudama Drive, and the show was also a compositing masterpiece, by the way. Trigger is not trying to do what Akudama Drive did though. Akudama Drive is trying to go for that photorealistic look with the backgrounds and the compositing. Trigger is still staying Trigger. Trigger is the absolute best studio when it comes to visual cohesion. Every single element that you get to see on screen at a given time feels like they belong on screen. Not even Ufotable has the level of visual cohesion that Trigger can put out. There are sequences in Ufotable works where the CGI stands out like a sore thumb, or some of the compositing effects look like they belong in Bollywood action movies. And I'm not talking about the quality of all of these individual elements, though that is important and that is done incredibly well in Edgerunners. But let's take Kill la Kill for example. In Kill la Kill, a lot of action sequences, especially in the early episodes, are full CGI. But visually, it still fits the style that Studio Trigger is going for the show. It does not stick like a sore thumb, even though it's obvious that it is CGI. And with Edgerunners, the cohesion is absolutely there. It's so good that with the last 2 episodes, I couldn't even tell that the vehicles that they used were CGI. I had to look and be like, wait a minute, those cars are CGI. And even then, it absolutely didn't affect my experience at all because, first of all, the CGI models that they used were really good. And secondly, they just fit right into the world. Like, even when they bounce around in a goofy way, that still fits the aesthetic that Trigger is going for. The way the shots are storyboarded also really adds to the experience. They are super high energy, they're super engaging. When they want to show emotionally important sequences, they just throw a bunch of line work in there. This is what you expect to see out of the character designs by Yo Yoshinari. And it also helps that the character designer is also the chief animation director for every single one of the episodes. This is clearly a passion project. Yo Yoshinari's character designs are just so good, they're so iconic. Just from the character designs you can tell a lot about the personality of the characters even. It's just so refreshing to see these unique, expressive character designs in a time where in other shows, all the characters have pretty much the same look, but just with different hair colors and eye colors. And Yuto Kaneko also deserves praise. He was a sub-character designer. He did some animation direction, and he also animated the coolest fucking sequence in the whole show. So yeah, it's just a stacked staff who just share the same creative vision. They all animate mostly in Kanada style animation, and it's just a level of visual cohesion that you won't get to see anywhere else. And the reason I haven't gotten into breaking down the clips yet is because, as I said before, there's so much visual cohesion here that just talking about animation wouldn't be fair to the visual identity that the show is trying to present. The show has people for color design, color filter processing, which I've never heard of before, color design assistants, color coordinators. There's just so much work that's gone into the vibrancy of this world. And the director of photography, Tetsuya Kawada, does an incredible job at making sure that every single element is harmonious. And Cyberpunk also uses different styles, like episode 6, with the heavily detailed crevices and shadows and the exaggerated expressions, and also some fluid non-Kanada style animation, which here it's done so that it looks different from the other scenes. It looks eerie here. But mostly it's just classic Kanada style animation with no excessively complex camera rotation or anything. In fact, there are very few backgrounds that are CGI here. Most dynamic shots are just done with a static background. Now, if you're wondering what Kanada style animation is, it's a type of animation that carries a lot of energy and weight and also usually has a lot of line work. It's a pose-to-pose type of animation where there are not all that many frames to make the animation fluid, but the few drawings that do exist are timed in a way to make it look snappy and very satisfying. Kanada style animation is named after its inventor, Yoshinori Kanada. Yoshinori Kanada is one of the most influential action animators of all time, and I don't say that lightly. In fact, I would probably say he's the most influential action animator of all time. I would say top three are like Yoshinori Kanada, Satoru Utsunomiya, and Yutaka Nakamura. Studio Trigger's entire animation identity is based around Yoshinori Kanada, and a bunch of even veteran animators are inspired by Kanada style animation, molding that into their own techniques and making it their own style. And even super talented young animators popping out that do the same. It's just so crazy to me that Kanada style animation is just so stylistically unique that it's being studied even today, when the reason Yoshinori Kanada invented this is because he didn't have the time to animate a lot of drawings with the schedule he was given for the shows he worked on. So he invented a technique where he could make impressive looking sequences with a few drawings. And that ended up being one of the most iconic animation styles ever. That said, I will be talking about a few of the standout sequences animated by the sub-character designer Yuto Kaneko. And the way they show the characters moving really fast with this trail left in the background is just a cool effect. I mean, it's not something that they came up with. I'm sure they're inspired by the way Kiritsugu moves in Fate Zero when he uses his technique. But the way the scene is just storyboarded and then just executed is absolutely incredible. And the way they show that time is now moving at this regular speed is when the compositing changes. Here, when time has stopped, there's a green filter going on with a green compositing texture work going on with all of the characters. But as soon as there's like a flash to show that it's switching, and boom, it goes back to Night City being Night City, and there's a blue coloring on top of all the characters. But look at that, the bad guys are here now. Or, well, no, not the bad guys, the good guys are here now. And as they hear, a red composite pops in. And it's just so seamless with the way they're playing with compositing. It's never too distracting. It always just complements the animation. They just seamlessly switched again to the time stop kind of compositing filter and switched back. It's just so well done. There's so much work that went into the compositing of the show. I can't even fucking imagine. Like, just look at this scene, right? Just look at how many colors are in the scene. And on top of that, you also have rain. Incredible. Next scene is this by Sakiko Uda. Just a really good scene. Just showcases the Studio Trigger style animation. Like, you see her coming in like this, and it just looks like a regular perspective here. It is slightly complicated with the main character being closer to the camera, so he's bigger, whereas Lucy is pretty far away, so she's smaller. But as you go forward in frames, you just see that the shots being more complicated, the perspective being more distorted, until this skip happens. Look at how small her face is here, and look at the next frame. Now, you might think that's too big of a jump, but in motion, that just gives that snappy timing that Kanada style animation is known for, as you can see there. It doesn't look awkward. It just works. And another example of their mind-numbingly incredible compositing, just look at how they show us that Lucy is getting David and his stretcher out of the ambulance. Right now, they're inside the ambulance, and just look at the colors on Lucy's face. Boom. See that? They're outside the ambulance, and the compositing, the textures, coloring changes so seamlessly. And again, just super exaggerated poses and such. This is not storyboarded in a way that it makes it look even more exaggerated like some of the other shots, but it's still exaggerated poses. And what she's doing here is also fucking crazy. She's using her ass to steer a stretcher. And I also love how her face comes super close to the camera, then goes further away. It just happens a lot with Trigger shows. It's just a joy to witness. Are those cars CGI? No, those cars are not CGI, as you can see here. Like, there are smears on it. Now, this is another scene, a dope scene, animated by Rino Kodama and corrected by Yuto Kaneko. Just, again, some cool-ass Kanada style animation, some really cool smears here. Yeah, I mean, look at those multiples. There's literally half of her body here, and then her entire body beside her. Again, really cool use of multiples. Multiples is something you'll see a lot in Kanada style animation, along with some rough line work, like these action lines. And you see more of the snappy timing here. Boom. there's so much build up here. Like here, it's already done the impact, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 13 frames of build up, which is then released. So that's so much energy building up with 13 frames of animation, which is then boom, released. And that snappiness, it what makes Kanada style animation so appealing. And then of course the classic trigger, show one scene 3 times, boom, 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 boom. I don't know why they do that, but they do that a lot. They do that excessively with Kill la Kill. It just makes it exhausting to watch at a point. But here, I think in the show they only do it like once, which is this one time. So I wanted to show it. This is something that Studio Trigger does a lot. Next is a scene by Toshiki Sato. Yes, he did animate in this show. And again, he is someone who uses Kanada style animation a lot. And Toshiki Sato is just fucking awesome. They don't get to see him at his best here because he's not animating like crazy fucking effects or crazy character acting either, which is the stuff that he's really good at. There are 4 fists on your screen right now. That makes no fucking sense when you pause the frame, but it's so fucking cool. The sense of speed is conveyed so well. And when he starts punching here, that actually jump scared me. I thought he was just going to scare him, and then a punch came from nowhere, and I was just, what the fuck just happened? And the way his body distorts here, it's like his body is getting ripped with the way it's moving so abruptly. And yeah, that's Sato. That's Sato's animation. It's very cool. Next is this sequence by Ichigo Kano. This is the most technically impressive sequence in the show, at least in my opinion. And Ichigo Kano here animates in the most classic Kanada type animation you'll ever get to see. You'll see almost all of Kanada style techniques here as well. So first of all, the shot is framed really well, and I love the compositing here to make it look like you're looking through a door, like there's grime and dirt and dust on top of it. And again, already you can see some snappy timing here, but when the bike comes in, that's when you really get to see the Kanada come into the animation. Extremely exaggerated poses, really geometrical like shapes with the smoke clouds here. Again, something that you'll see. Also look at the abrupt motions that the bike's going through. Right now it's standing on its front wheel. Right now it's standing neutrally, and boom, it's doing a wheelie. It did a stoppie, went to neutral, and then did a wheelie. With the abrupt pose shifts, with a very deliberate, snappy timing is what makes Kanada style animation what it is. And again, something that you see a lot, a drawing that where every pose is being held, but it's also moving, right? Like David's clothing here is moving, so is the wheel of the bike, and the motion of the wheel is just displayed using inky speed lines. And then the guy moves. Look at how many poses he goes through. He goes from here to here. This is a completely different pose that's happening in the span of 1 frame. And the next pose, boom, a completely different pose again. Kanada style animation is like the exact opposite of Naoto Shishida's animation. And again, classic Kanada style animation with the way the guy's talking. They talk with their entire body. They don't just flap their mouths while they're speaking. And one of the most classic techniques from Kanada style, it's the Kanada light flare. You need a cross light flare and a circle around it. That's some of the basics, but you also need Kanada style snappy timing to come with that. Otherwise, it won't be counted as Kanada style or Kanada light flare. You show the interaction and then you zoom out to show all the characters in super exaggerated poses. Like look at the arc here. It's going all the way like this. And then soon we get a pretty close-up shot of his face. And then now look at this arc. Look at his hand arc here. That is so fucking cool. That is so highly energetic. Again, an extremely dynamic shot with an extremely exaggerated arc. Super cool perspective shot. I sound like a parrot right now. I'm just repeating what I said over and over again. Last but not least, there's the final scene where the big man pops in. A cool impact frame here. Yeah, it's just single impact frame that is held for 1, 2, 3, 4 frames. It is moving slightly even in the impact frame, like the camera is shaking a little bit. Again, just look at this shot. All of these transformation sequences just remind me of old school Gainax transformation sequences. I just love it. The smoke cloud forming also looks really cool with some really cool looking spears. How many times did I just say really cool? I need to improve my vocabulary. And yeah, fucking sick impact frames. Boom. Oh my god, that's so cool. And then he just explodes into a puff of blood smoke. Yeah, that's just sick. The ring of blood that's just exploding through him. And then his bits and pieces just flowing across the screen seamlessly, by the way. This is not a CGI background, but the shift in perspective is just so cool. You're doing an almost 180. This is not exactly a 180. Slightly less than a 180. It's probably like a 120 angle rotation, maybe. But it's still done seamlessly in one single background artwork. And the way it's done is that the background art is smeared a bit. Some elements of it are blurred. The elements that are moving really fast. Look at the corners here. Those elements are still completely on focus. And the elements that are moving really fast are blurred. Really difficult when you have a static background to work with and you want to make a dynamic rotation shot or something like that. Mob Psycho did that really well in one of the episodes where it was just a static background, but they did a full 360 rotation with that static background. But you generally always prefer a CGI background to do something like even this. Like if Ufotable was doing this, the background would undoubtedly be CGI. Ichigo Kanna also animated this really emotionally impactful sequence. Again, most of this just looks like regular old Kanada style animation. Here you go. Look at this exaggerated arc, right? Again, the transformation, classic Kanada style stuff. Cool impact frames here. This almost looked like Yutaka Nakamura's impact frames. But this shot, right? This looks like it was drawn by Hironori Tanaka. Everything here, the thin line work that is still pops out really well. A lot of individual line work with the hair and stuff. And the way it's shaded makes it kind of look like it was animated by Hironori Tanaka, which it's not. And there's also another cut here with David. Yeah, this just looks like it was straight up animated by Tanaka. Honestly, that's what I thought when I first saw this. But no, Tanaka didn't do this. Super cool brush strokes used here to show impact frames, and a unique idea to show have a yellow background for an impact frame. But I mean, it is switching for an explosion, right? So I think it sets up the explosion really well. And that's about it. I know there are more sequences with fantastic animation, but I mean, as I said before, it's just so visually cohesive that I just have to thinking of the entire movie as one clip and then just break down everything in every scene, which would probably take me like a couple of days. So instead of doing that, I just wanted to rather give you an idea of what this animation is like, which I think I've succeeded at doing right now. Cyberpunk Edgerunners, really good show and a really good looking show. Really loved it. It is my anime of the year, by the way. Currently, I loved it more than Osama Ranking, definitely. I also loved it more than Demon Slayer. But it will have competition with Mob Psycho 100 Season 3 and Chainsaw Man. There's also Made in Abyss Season 2 that I haven't watched, but if I did watch it, I'd probably have that as my anime of the year because Made in Abyss is one of my favorite shows of all time. It's up there with Mob Psycho 100. Mob Psycho 100 is my single favorite show of all time. This is still really, really good. And if you haven't watched it, I really recommend you to do watch it. But I'm pretty sure you did watch it. Otherwise, why the hell would you watch an animation analysis of it? That's about it. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you did not like this video, then leave a dislike and tell me down in the comment section why you disliked. I read most of the comment section, so you can tell me down in there anything you want. If you want to see more of the stuff, then you're in luck because I will keep making more of the stuff. So make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss it. And as usual, stay tuned for the Nozomu Abe animation analysis, which will come soon.